we have to talk about, and even with this Brian Flores thing, that the conversation changes of like the way corporate racism looks, right? Because people think corporate racism looks like you're saying, I won't hire any black people and I won't hire any niggers. That's not how it looks, right? The way it is, it's done, it's systemic. So it's very hard to prove and it's very hard to quantify. But when you have staggering numbers like the numbers that I gave you guys, it starts to become data. It starts to become quantifiable. Like, okay, are we saying that out of all these black coaches in the NFL, none of them are qualified, to your point about the interviews? You know what I mean? Like, are we saying that, and are we saying we intrinsically think white men are more qualified for these positions at a, basically now at the higher, at a 90% clip?
Right. But when you talk about a good old boys club or a collective, you know what I'm saying? Me working in corporate stuff and even working on the Hill in different places, and you working in corporate, and them saying they don't fit the culture. My interpretation is that when they get drunk or when they turn up,
they can't say the wild shit they want to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build. Let's shine, yeah.
Super Bowl is coming. Super Bowl is coming, and I wanted to talk about something related to the Super Bowl. It's very interesting how this timing goes. And I really believe this lawsuit was filed intentionally during this time too. But recently, Brian Flores, who is now the former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, filed a class action lawsuit in the Manhattan courts stating that his firing or his termination, he's fighting his termination of Miami Dolphins, and he alleges that while he was there, he was propositioned or even slightly kind of attempted to be forced for tanking or throwing in games or intentionally losing games. And he also files in this lawsuit against the Denver Broncos and the New York Giants. That in the interview process of him interviewing as a coach, they were actually how do you want to say this? They were not really meaningful or really interviews that were really.
They were sham interviews.
That's a good word. Sham interviews in which he only was there to fulfill the mandate that is in the NFL called the Rooney Rule, that says that you must have a diverse pool of applicants for the head coach position. That's a lot of stuff. I'm gonna let you take take it from here.
Yeah. So what Brian Flores is doing, first of all, applaud my man. It's commendable because
you look tired saying it. You look,
hey, because he knows he could be ending his career, right? And when he filed it, he actually still had an interview with the New Orleans Saints. And he even said publicly, like, yo, even if I get the job with the New Orleans Saints, I'm not dropping a lawsuit. And he said, this is not me. It's not about me. He said, this is bigger than me. This is about the next minority head coach that's coming up that's going to have to deal with this. And weirdly, when you talk about the timing of it, Hugh Jackson was recently on a podcast called The Pivot.
And who's Hugh Jackson?
Hugh Jackson is a black coach who was coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. He coached the Cleveland, the Cleveland Browns. He's been all around the league. He's coached at every level, from head coach to offensive coordinator to defensive coordinator. Like he's coached everything at every level. And he said he was blackballed out of the game.
Really?
And he talked about how they basically, when he got to Cleveland, they wanted to pay him to lose games.
And right. I think what's going to come out of that, and let me just, if I could just take that part of being paid to lose games, it's not a racial thing. It's a sports industry thing. I know this happens in, and
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said so. And this is what Brian Flores and Hugh Jackson was talking about as the racial component to that, right? They're like, I don't think that they never asked white coaches to lose. They said the difference is when white coaches do it, it's not used against them in the future to make them unhireable.
That's
And
it.
and they said that's what happened. Like Brian Flores was like, I went down there, like I think he went like 7-1 the last 8 games of the season. So he ended up being 9-8. And like, I'm 9-8 and can't get a job nowhere else. I just turned this franchise around that was, losing games, and I can't get a job. And Hugh Jackson said the same thing. He said, I just came from going to a conference game. Then I go to Cleveland before the season starts. They get rid of all the veterans. They get rid of all my skill guys. They get rid of anybody that can play. And he said, go look at the teams, and you'll see that they weren't trying to win because they wanted draft picks. He said, and instead of them saying specifically like they told Brian Flores, we'll pay $100,000 to lose a game, they're telling Hugh Jackson, if you lose like this many games, you get bonuses. And he's like, I don't want bonuses. Take that money and get me players. And they're like, no, just do this. We just want you to, basically they call it a rebuild. And the tricky thing about the NFL is the sorriest team is going to get money. The sorriest team is going to get money because it's shared with all the owners. The owners have a profit
Like a
share.
pot or something.
Yeah, they got
like
a
that.
profit share at the end of the year. So no matter what, the owners they're going to be in the black, right? The owners are going to be good. So they said the problem is when you do this to a black coach, it gets black coaches. First of all, like we talked about earlier, it's not about one coach when it comes. It's about all black coaches now, because it turns into, well, all black coaches can't win. Because these 2 black coaches did it and they couldn't win. So why should we hire more black coaches, right? And then you get coaches like Josh McDaniels and Kyle Shanahan, who can lose all the time and can continue to come up and get jobs, right? But a black coach can't do that. Like a black coach couldn't blow a 28-3 lead in Atlanta to Tom Brady and get another job right after. Lose some more and then go get another job right after.
Yeah, I think that's really important because for a very long time in sports as a whole, either coaching positions or critical positions, be it the quarterback or the point guard in the NBA, there was this idea that these were highly intellectual positions that required highly intellectual people and people that can exude leadership. So very long in sports, it was the white hope, or the white person, the white man,
quarterback, the white coach.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the modern era, the first black head coach was Art Shell for the Oakland Raiders and Los Angeles Raiders in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And the Raiders have always been a little bit more progressive than everybody else. They hired the first black coach, the first Latino coach before that.
Mm-hmm. They let some people come up from the field a little bit earlier. But I like the point that you said in terms of like how this becomes a racial incident. It reifies this idea that black and so what happens is that black and brown bodies are only designed to listen to instructions and perform. That's the overarching thing. Like it's this being able to strategize and oversee and lead. No, you lead that to the higher thinkers, right? Which are the white guys. So this is something that is still promulgated in the sports industry that you're talking about. Another thing that was in this documentation that Flores says, he compared the NFL to a plantation system or a plantation-like environment where you have these owners who are all close-knit, who are in this club or in this tax bracket and in positions of power, who make these decisions around predominantly black bodies, who are putting their literal bodies up every week in order to fatten their pockets at the end of the day, right? So he very blatantly says that, which is something that's not new. $40 million slave and all of these other.
Yeah. Well, and two, I want to bring up something that was interesting to me, because with all of this, they said that Brian Flores, his lawsuit is pretty damn tight. His lawsuit is pretty tight. His evidence is pretty tight from what I've been hearing and what I've been reading. The NFL came out and immediately called it meritless without any investigation, won't even submit that there could be an issue. And to me, I feel like that was a misstep because y'all kind of played into his hand. Like y'all should have came out and said we will investigate, and but to come out off top, and like you said, the owners club come out off top and back the owners. Oh, this is meritless, it's baseless, da da da. Like I think that's going to give fuel to the fire when it comes to Flores' case. But let me give you a few stats as we go so our listeners can understand what's actually, because I want to give context. I know people want to say like, oh, you guys try to call everything racist and maybe they just not the qualified guy for the job. All the talking points that we're going to get. So let me just give y'all some stats. Right now, there's one current Black head coach in the NFL. And 9% of the last 31 head coach positions have been Black. So 3 coaches out of the last 31 open positions. You got 6 Black general managers, which is 19%. I guess that's a little better. And then but you're talking about a league with 70% Black players. So a league with 70% Black players only has 1 head coach. And then you have a great offensive coordinator like Eric Bieniemy, who was offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. He has Patrick Mahomes. These guys have been in the Super Bowl and 4 conference championship games in the last year. So that means he is the top offensive coordinator with the top offense and the top quarterback. And anytime that happens, that guy gets a head coaching job. Eric Bieniemy is 0 for 20 in head coaching interviews.
Wow. This.
So I want people to understand that. And the reason I'm glad Brian Flores is bringing this up, this is not something that's happening in a vacuum. And he put all of this in his lawsuit. In his lawsuit, he talked about Kaepernick. He put that in there. In his lawsuit, he talked about Gruden. The Gruden investigation that came out with all the racist stuff that he was saying. He talked about the race norming in regards to the concussion protocols, how they was trying to do race norming to not pay the Black players the same amount as white players when it came to concussion, or basically saying like, well, the white players are a little smarter, so he seems more diminished than the dumb Black player. You know what I mean? Like,
this is eugenics all over again.
Over again. And then, so listen, the Rooney Rule came out. Oh, damn, I wish I knew exactly.
2002 about.
Thank you. So the Rooney Rule came out in 2002. To me, this is the most staggering number, right? So since 2002, out of 129 vacancies since the Rooney Rule, only 15 of those positions have gone to a Black coach.
Wow.
So so there's a problem. We have a problem.
We have a problem. What makes this being situated in the NFL? We have the NBA, we have baseball, we have soccer. Why is this important now?
Because I think the NFL is vastly far behind any of the other sports in regards to taking care of their players. Blacks in upper management, like there's literally, I think this might be one of the few sports where there's still no Black owners at all. And again, you're talking about a league that's 70% Black players, and the difference is like, okay, let's say what the NBA is like 72% Black players, but it's 15 people per roster, right? But that's not as staggering when you think of the NFL is 70% Black players, and it's 55 people per roster. So if it's 55 players per team and you have 1 Black head coach, that's insanity. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and also, for a very long time, baseball was called American sport, but that, in my opinion, was replaced by
basically football. Absolutely,
right.
It was replaced by football for sure.
Right, and so football becomes this kind of global representation of American masculinity, American power, American competition, and when you have this representation of the owners, I hate that word, right? And we talk about this: the owners, the overseers, the AKA the coaches, representing one race, and everybody else, are Black, brown, Tongan, Samoan, with the couple of the kickers and the quarterback, are largely white still. This, to me, reifies or concretizes this image of American slavery. It really does. Or maybe people are like, oh, that's so extreme. At the very least, it symbolizes the hierarchical racial structure and power structure that exists.
It's a microcosm of America.
Mhm.
It is, and that's why this is so important to talk about. It's a microcosm of what goes on in corporate America. And another thing I want to talk about is even when you talk about the coaching tree, right? Like every coach has a coaching tree. Like Bill Belichick has a coaching tree, which is why all of this kind of came about, because Bill Belichick coached Brian Flores and Brian Diablo. And he thought he was texting Brian Diablo when he was like congratulating him on getting the job that Brian Flores was supposed to be interviewing for the next day. But again, you talk about these coaching trees. So what happens is, Kaya, when you have...
What is a coaching tree? That's something foreign to me.
Okay, so the coaching tree is basically, let's say you have the head coach. The head coach has an offensive coordinator under him, a defensive coordinator, kicker, special kicker, special kicking coach. He has a special teams coach. He has a running backs coach, a wide receiver coach. Like each position damn near has their own coach. That's the coaching tree. And if you're at the bottom of the coaching tree, you try to work your way up from like a running back coach to an offensive coordinator. And the offensive coordinator is the step right before a head coach. So every coach in the NFL has a coaching tree like this. And the thing that happens is a lot of times is when you have this nepotism and you have this cronyism and you have the good old boys network, the coaching tree continues to be them and their homeboys or them and their sons and their friends. So if a black coach gets in there and he only gets that one shot, that whole coaching tree dies.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? So he doesn't get a chance.
Okay.
He doesn't get a chance to continue to, because if you look at the tentacles of Bill Belichick throughout the NFL, he's probably touching 12 or 14 teams in the NFL right now. But then you get somebody like Brian Flores, because of what happens to him and how they do him, he's not going to get that chance to build out and touch 12 or 13 teams with his coaching tree.
And I'm glad you said that, the NFL is a microcosm of how corporate America hires. And that's also in the educational sector, too. The Rooney Rule, I don't know what it's called in the corporate sector or the academic sector, but I know this for a fact. When you put out a hire, CEO, exec position, I know people who have said, one, let me tell you, in the academic world, they will close a search if there isn't a diverse representation.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I know of situations where they put out the hiring, they put out the call. The person is already in the organization, has already been promised the position. It's just, so it could look like as if there was an attempt to, expand the pool. So this is not anything, this is not just, in a vacuum, with the NFL. And the practices of, we're going to act like we really truly, I'm trying to think of where is this? But this also, like in the tech space, well, we can't find anybody qualified, to occupy these places. So, I mean, what do you do? Right. And even I have been on hiring committees where this is in the academic space. Clearly, this person, we don't see the person. It's like a phone interview. And by the person's name, how you like if this person is black or definitely not white. Right. And then I would hear things like, well, I don't think that this person is fit to teach our kind of students. Well, what the fuck kind of students you're talking about? I teach them every day. I've taught community college, to, prestigious college. And I don't see necessarily a difference than just the bank account.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because so that's the thing that, we have to talk about. And even with this Brian Flores thing, that the conversation changes of like the way corporate racism looks, right? Because people think corporate racism looks like you're saying, I won't hire any black people and I won't hire any niggers. That's not how it looks, right? The way it's done is systemic. So it's very hard to prove and it's very hard to quantify. But when you have staggering numbers like the numbers that I gave you guys, it starts to become data. It starts to become quantifiable. Like, okay, are we saying that out of all these black coaches in the NFL, none of them are qualified, to your point about the interviews? You know what I mean? Like, are we saying that? And are we saying we intrinsically think white men are more qualified for these positions basically now at the higher, at a 90% clip?
Right. But when you talk about a good old boy boys club or a collective. You know what I'm saying? Me working in corporate stuff and even working on the Hill in different places, and you working in corporate, and them saying they don't fit the culture. My interpretation is that when they get drunk or when they turn up,
They can't say the wild
they
shit they
can't
want to say. Yeah,
exactly. That's
yeah,
it. They can't say the wild shit, nor can they do the wild shit. And
yeah.
I've been in those places where
I
some
have
wild
too.
shit has been said and done. And when they see you the next week, they want to know if you're gonna pop off or you're gonna say something.
Yep.
And then somehow, maybe I lose my job or I'm out
Yeah.
of a contract or something like that. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done. You've worked so hard for this company. You know that stuff.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Arc Republic. If you like what you see and you like what you hear, you can actually keep this mothership going. How? You can make a tax-deductible donation in several ways. One, Cash App us at Arc Republic Media. And you can also go on our website, arcrepublic.com/donate. As well, you can also donate to our fiscal sponsor and our sister organization at Black Farmers Index, that is Cash App, or also go onto their website, blackfarmersindex.com. We are two Black women-owned media organizations who share our profits so folk can thrive.
So I think, yeah, so the Brian Flores, in the beginning, you shook your head like, ooh, I don't know. To date, I don't know anybody that has challenged the NFL and has been successful. And what I mean successful is that they win their case and they maintain their job, because this is what Brian Flores, he still wants to be a part of the sports industry. Why? I mean, I know he's the only one that can answer it, but why? But the bigger question I would say is, if we know, in particular, football, but just not exclusive to football, because any sport wears and tears on the body.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're talking about NFL, it is
Well, when you talk to these guys and you hear from these athletes, it really comes down to like the love of the game. You know what I mean? For them, they like, yo, I love this game. And it's one of the reasons that Brian Flores wanted to bring this lawsuit. He was like, I love the game. And I feel like as somebody from, I think he's from Brownsville, New York, he's like somebody from, he said
from
this
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. He's like, this game was able to get me out of my circumstances. He said, so I owe it to the game to keep its integrity and dignity. He said, so why would I try to lose a game? Why would I try to, to denigrate my integrity? And then, like he said, I love coaching. And then Hugh Jackson had a great point. Again, watch the Pivot podcast with Hugh Jackson. He has some really, really great points because he's now coaching at Grambling. And he's saying, well, the alternative route is F the NFL. Let's go start coaching at these historically Black colleges and getting them up to par and getting these historically Black colleges to get the resources and the money and that TV money. He like, let's start to just change our own fortunes. You know what I mean? He said he's having a great time down there at Grambling, and he's having a great time turning things around. He's like getting top recruits. You got guys like Hugh Jackson, Deion Sanders, Eddie George are now at historically Black colleges and turning those, like, barely, damn near single-handedly turning those colleges around, not just in an athletic sense, but with athletics comes what? Athletics comes more academia. With more academia comes more resources, and more resources, and from athletics, you're going to get more TV time. More TV time means more money, which means more resources for the school. A lot of people don't know this, and I try to talk about this a lot. One of the things that happened that hurt Black colleges so much with integration happening was they start just picking and plucking our best and brightest. And when they pick and plucked our best and brightest from the athletic side, say they start taking them and they start putting them in USC, our best and brightest academics start going to USC. So not only did we lose the athletes, we started losing our athletes and our academia from the historically Black colleges. Well, what these guys are doing now is they're trying to instill that back in. And Hugh Jackson is basically saying, look, there's places for us, there's spaces for us out here. And there's a coach named Michael Locksley who actually started a coalition for Black college, not just Black college, coalition for college coaches, where he's basically started a program where we get a pool of all the Black coaches, and we go into these schools and we pairing them up with athletic directors, we pairing them up with other programs so we can get them more jobs. So so far we done got 13 coaches jobs, and it's only been 2 years, so they did more than a Rooney Rule in like 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what you're saying is that if you let people who have been at the butt end of a problem, who are the ones who get all the crap, they will give you what the solution is. They know clearly what the solution is, right? So I would say this: the ideal situation is that when you have stellar athletics, then it will open up to better research, to better academics. Unfortunately, across America, at predominantly white universities, outside of HBCUs, unfortunately, sports, because it's such a money-making industry, often siphons a lot of the resources out of other places in the schools. But you made a very valid point about how talent, not only from the, the sports side, but also the academic side, and how in desegregation, it leaves the HBCU, but it also creates there was a proper, the reason why is because schools couldn't get funding if they didn't have enough representation.
Yeah.
That's why. If it could stay the way it is, they
would have. Yeah.
They would have.
Yeah.
It was down to the money issue, right? So let me just put that out there. But what happens when you have these, the Black colleges and universities, not getting the numbers or maybe the prestige that they had, then there becomes this idea that they are less than and inferior.
Say that.
When still, I was just talking to Dr. Sharice Janae Nelson about that, when still production, historically, Black colleges historically have produced most Black professionals, if you want to talk about over the span of time, but still today produce, a strong number, of those quote unquote movers, shakers. Me going to Florida A&M University, I could name 6 or 7 people right now in the entertainment industry who I went to school with. Will Packer, I went to school with. We actually sat next to each other in Black psychology class. I actually beat him at a game of checkers in LA when he was first coming up. He took me to some old bar where it was like some old Cubanos or something, Italian smoking cigar. Anyway, so there's a whole bevy of people that come out of it. And I'm so glad you brought that. I was long-winded. I wanted to bring up this point really quickly. Tony Dungy, I don't know if you saw the he at least I saw one interview when he was talking about this. And I want us to talk about what leadership looks like in America, or what male leadership, right? And so there is this idea that male leadership is supposed to have this very paternal type of, vibe, right?
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be understanding, but firm, be an example, but loving.
Basically the magical Negro.
Right. I'm talking about white men, right? And
okay.
You don't know what you're doing, so let me guide you.
Oh no, I don't think that is the view. I think that's the view of black male leadership. That is not the view of white male leadership, especially in sports.
Well, that's what so Tony Dungy was saying, that he went on an interview before he became the champion of what was it? Is it Indiana? What? You see, I'm not.
Yeah, the Colts, the Indiana Colts.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So before that, I think maybe a couple of seasons before, he's interviewing as head coach, and the feedback was that he wasn't going to be a good hire. He wasn't a good interviewer, and for him, it was based around this idea, like, how would you lead? And he was something like, I show them care, concern, that I believe in them. I'm going to be honest with them. It was this very kind of nurturing, mature, I see you.
Humanistic.
Yes, humanistic. They were like, oh, hell no. No, you can't do these to these goddamn animals. Like, that's the implication. Yeah. Like, you got to yell and scream and all this other stuff, right? So it's really interesting what this idea of what male leadership looks like. I just had to put that out there too.
No, I agree 100%.
Okay, so your last thoughts. Oh, the Super Bowl is coming to Los Angeles. We talked about this. What is the energy in LA right now?
It's chill right now. It's gonna rev up probably like Wednesday when all the out of towners get here, when everybody gets here for the Super Bowl festivities and all the Super Bowl parties. But the funny thing is, all the people who live here, like, yo, we laying back, staying at home. We only want to be a part of it.
Yeah, everybody's like, I'm going to Costco on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
and then you ain't gonna see me until Monday
Mhm.
because it's gonna be a mess. It's
Mhm.
gonna be ridiculous. It's gonna be like All-Star Weekend amplified, and we know what that looked like.
Right, yeah.
so just telling my LA folks, yo, stay out the way. The tickets were ridiculously high. Like, I think the second row tickets were like $60,000 a ticket.
Whoa.
So you are not going to have a lot of regular LA natives in the house at the
Right.
Super Bowl.
Wow, you're going to have a whole bunch of people that came up during this pandemic that are there.
100%. Some PPP tickets going to be in the house.
PPP tickets and them Amazon surrogates.
Yep.
And those, what do you call those? Those Tesla folk are going to be the ones. Thank you so much, Dame. I really enjoyed our conversation. Last thoughts are always to you. Any last thoughts?
Just, everybody, my Black folks, go take care of each other. That's it. Black folks, let's take care of each other.
All right. Thank you so much. You are listening to Arc Republic.
Shortly after this discussion, it was reported that Miami Dolphins hired a biracial head coach, Mike McDaniel, as Brian Flores' replacement. Interestingly enough, Mike McDaniel in a press conference said that he does not necessarily identify as race, but he identifies as a human, and by his race being something that is a focus was weird for him. Go figure.
Let's embark on the Arc Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times so all can build. Let's shine, yeah.